floating down their street this week, no? We're so glad that you're here this morning. If you wouldn't mind all taking out your phones and doing a little check-in on the QR code. What we do here every single week at WellBeing Clubs is that we bring people together. We also try to help them connect with resources in the entrepreneurial field and education. How many of you, is it your first time coming this morning? Yay! You're glad you're here! And how many of you have been here like more than 5 times? Woo! I love that too, that's amazing. Today we have a beautiful and super exciting presentation for you. Okay, one last question. How many people know Rachel Baldwin? And how many people have been touched or affected by her kind words, by her big heart? Oh, you should turn around and look. All of you. Oh, okay, sorry. Well, this project that Rachel has been working on now for a couple of years is almost like an outpouring of her heart in reality and how she wants to tend to everyone. And she has systemized it in a really cool way. So I'm really excited for her to take the stage. But let's just do this. This is our mission. I want to give a shout out to our organizers who show up every single week. Can you guys all put your hands together for all the organizers? We've got Ray Caller right over here, Brian back there.
It's at Equal Times. My name is Rachel Boakley, and a good part of my presentation actually boils down to being a recovering entrepreneur. So we'll talk about that. I was raised sort of exposed in ways that we would never really want our kids exposed these days to the realities of the world and to the realities of human frailty and human suffering and to human greatness and what we're capable of. And also to the reality that each one of us contains both of those. That if we are capable of great good, we are capable of equal evil. And that is an important reality for us to understand. With that kind of an upbringing, it led to a pretty interesting and adventurous adolescence and young adulthood, and even now, life, right? Middle age. But one question that has sort of bothered me, or did bother me for a long time, is how is it that we're in the 21st century and we don't have common language for what our species needs to thrive? We know what every other species needs, but not our own. And it should be pretty simple, right? So humans are nature. When we start there, right, if we know what every other species, from bacteria to perennials to a great white shark, we know that we can all define what the conditions are, we can find them pretty quickly, right? We know what destroys them. If we can put automobiles into space or telecommunication infrastructure in our pocket, right? We can map the human genome, but what are the conditions, right? Because flourishing is not, it's not the pursuit of the luxury class. It's what all species do normally. It is the natural outcome of sustainable conditions. And I think one of the things that we have gotten distracted by is that we occupy a unique space in the natural kingdom, right? We don't see our level of consciousness displayed in the same way anywhere else in the natural order. And so that leads us, because we are so powerful and so capable and able to adapt in such incredible ways, right? It leads us to forget our place in the natural order, which leads to all kinds of confusion. So if we forget that you have more in common with every other human on the face of the planet than any differences, if you're not aware of that, then you're never going to fully understand your own path, because you can't start if you're not starting with your actual placement in the larger. scale of things, then we sort of spiral into our uniqueness, and we need both, right? We need to understand our context, and then we need to understand our uniqueness. So when we don't understand the conditions we need, we languish, right? Think about if you were going to adopt a pet, and you're going to get some rare some rare breed, right? Would you just randomly go and pick it up and bring it home and treat it like any other animal? No, if you spend a bunch of money on it, you're going to be like, okay, what does this dog need? What is it, right? We design the conditions. If we want a Great Dane, we don't live in a studio apartment, right? So we pay attention to that stuff. It's just natural. We expect our pets to thrive. We expect our crops to thrive. We expect our children to thrive. But then when it comes to us, thriving has gone out the door somehow. I want to use case in point with COVID. So during lockdown, we actually had favorable conditions in a lot of ways. We didn't have commutes. We got unlimited time with our loved ones, right? We had fewer demands and a slower pace. And yet what happens is when you have been living in a languishing state, not necessarily chronically ill, but not necessarily thriving, you are literally just surviving. You're just getting by. And when something tips that, we fall off the cliff, right? And so instead of being able to recognize, wow, what a blessing, right? I have unlimited time with my children when their childhood is zooming by. Or I have the ability to take a walk in nature every day. I have a grant from the grind. Instead, we found all kinds of anxiety, political discourse collapsed, and we suffered even more because we're so alienated and unfamiliar with the actual needs we have for flourishing. When we are unfamiliar with our needs, right, we can't meet them. And so there is no reaching flourishing in that state. Okay. So the way that we solve problems and the way that we ask questions leads to the problems we solve and the answers we get, right? So right now, our healthcare system, our mental health system, and even corporate wellness and organizational wellness is all based on what's called a pathogenic approach. And basically it asks, what is wrong and how do we fix it, right? What are the symptoms and how do we mitigate them? When you have chronic illness, that's a valid line of reasoning, right? But that line of reasoning never gets you to health because you are always on the lookout for illness. So you can mitigate illness endlessly, but if you don't establish the conditions for health, you will never get there, right? So with this model, healthy equals not chronically ill, right? So if you think about it, what is flourishing? What does it mean to really thrive? We're so unfamiliar with it. If you have a colleague that always came in on a Monday morning whistling and happy, you're like, oh, what is up with this guy, right? People who are like all cheery and happy, you just like, what is wrong with you? You're so abnormal, right? Here we go. All right, so another way to ask questions is to say what creates health and how do we maintain those conditions? And that is called a salutogenic approach. So when we create the conditions for health, right, then it is the natural outcome of whatever organism to thrive. It is upstream. So we are designing conditions. We are not designing individuals, right? So you don't fix the seeds, you fix the soil, and the seeds thrive. And this is the only way to create flourishing. But interestingly, it's pretty straightforward, right? So we have grown accustomed to feeling like everything is so complicated. And, I mean, climate change and geopolitics and political discourse and everything is just impossible. And it's all entangled and we'll never solve it. And as long as we are believing that, we can't solve things because we assume that complicated problems require complicated answers, and that is not the case. If we just think through all of recorded human history, all the wise teachers and sages and prophets taught very practical, very simple lessons. Never anything too complicated. The framework so basically that led me to asking the question, what do humans need to thrive? What are these conditions? Now, about 10 years ago, I was hired as a chapter instructor for the American Red Cross. And as soon as I began studying my instructor materials, I got kind of obsessed with the idea that, like, hey, we teach people how to, save lives, how to resuscitate someone in cardiac arrest. Like, what if we just also had a way to teach them how to flourish? And if we could teach the conditions for human thriving in a way that's basically like taking a basic first aid course. And so that was my approach. And what I came up with is the 10 areas of human need, right? That sort of is the macronutrients of human flourishing. They apply to all humans regardless of any characteristics, individual characteristics. So, nourish, rest, exercise, maintain, eliminate for the body, and then for the being. Now, this doesn't require any kind of supernatural or any kind of belief system, because when I say being, I'm just referring to the part of you that animates your body, that doesn't show up on an x-ray, but it's like the wind, right? We've never seen the wind. We see the effects of the wind, right? So whatever that immaterial aspect of us is, our psychological component, that's what I'm talking about, right? So whether you have deep faith or whether you have no faith, wherever you are, none of this it is what we all have in common, right? The interesting thing is, we kind of all understand approximately what it means to nourish, rest, exercise, maintain, eliminate for our body. But when we use correlative language, it helps us to make things that tend to be ambiguous, like mental health or well-being, right? That tend to have these just general, vague notions for us, very practical and actionable. So they inform the things that we don't see directly. And the first, as I put this material together many years ago when I began this, I taught it for a year with violent offenders who were incarcerated. And these were like pretty serious conditions. They weren't even a jail. They weren't even a prison, right? Which the difference between a jail and a prison is stark, right? Prisons are designed for long term. So there is a measure of a life that you can live. A jail is not. And I taught for a year, and I had guys that were in my course every week for a year, which tells you that they were in a situation with no light, no windows to the outdoors. This is a downtown holding center. They are in incredibly crowded conditions, right? They have no control over what they're eating, no control over who's in their space, right? No even visual sight to the outdoors, let alone actually getting outside. 1 hour a month outdoors, if they weren't on lockdown, right? That's how we're reforming people, right? Oh, great. So I wanted to test the conditions. Does this work for all humans, right? If you're locked up and you don't have control over those things, does this work? Because I don't want to be involved in anything that's for anybody special. We're all special, right? So part of what this approach is locating agency, right? Agency is what you have the ability to initiate, execute, and control. When you focus on things that you have no control over, you experience yourself as helpless. When you locate what you do have control over and you focus on that and you exert your influence over that, you experience your power. And as you do that, your agency grows. And your agency is equal to your influence right? It's not complicated. And so what I found is each week, these participants would come in, they would locate their agency in the form of making a tending plan for the 10 areas, right? How were they going to nourish, rest, exercise, maintain, eliminate in the situation that they were in? And if they didn't have control over their diet, then they took a 22-ounce tumbler and they used a formula for hydrating their bodies, and they kept a schedule for how they were going to profoundly hydrate themselves, right? I had one participant about 5 months in who really was only ever there to get out of his cell, and I did not. He was never super interested. He liked to sit across from me and kind of like needle me a little bit. But it did not bother me, right? Because I would want to get out of my cell too, once a week. But one day I came in and I'm getting ready to start class, and he says, I quit eating sticky buns. He would get a sticky bun every day at 3 o'clock from the commissary, right? And I said, why? And he said, because I'm trying to nourish my body, and that's not good for it. I mean, when you're in conditions like that, I know people who were not incarcerated, and your life is so dependent on these little routines because it's keeping you from falling off the cliff, right? And I was blown away, honestly, by that choice. But that's what happens when we locate where we have the ability to initiate, execute, control, and we exert our influence. So, all right, that's the framework initially. And now I want to talk about 2 manifestations of it. So initially, it evolved into this, the WellBeing Project, right? So this is for, this is an individual and organizational, like community-based model. So it has a tool, a framework of courses, a methodology for community building, and an economy that goes with it. So a personal inventory that someone can actually, that will take you through every area of the 10 areas of human needs and give you a dashboard to show you where you're at. A lot of times when we think about well-being and we think, oh, I should be taking better care of myself. But what does that even mean, and where do I start, right? This is a tool that will lay it out, right? So not only will you get a dashboard that shows you where this all falls, right? And my favorite is a radar chart, because the idea is not to have perfection. The idea is to have symmetry and balance. So no area is super high and no area is super low, right? And so addressing a balance. We're nature, right? You never see a tree with a leafy, beautiful branch and a twiggy, little, right? Or not often. Not in a healthy tree. But that's how we live most of our lives, right? We're happy to show certain things. God forbid anyone see these other areas, right? This is a very, very practical tool. Basically, after the dashboard, it turns into a worksheet, and it auto-populates, and it will show you your lowest 2 areas, and then 3 lowest statements within those areas. And then you can click through on any one of them, and it will populate and give you 5 to 6 simple, practical, manageable things, and you just pick one, right? And you would be amazed at the knock-on effect. So let's say I decide I'm going to put my phone on the dining room table and not go to bed with my phone in my room. In my life, that translates to an average of an extra hour of sleep, which is an extra night per week. Do you know what the knock-on effects of an extra night of sleep every week is? Profound. So it's not just about making it manageable and, give it a shot. It's a good, profound changes happen through simple choices, right? And this gives you the simple choices that are going to make the most effective impact. So the framework, so there are 3 courses that sort of walk you through. The first course is the 7 concepts. And this is basically just teaching to give the broad language and imagery of what all humans need to thrive, right? Course 2 and course 3 then say, now, you are not universal. So how do these universal concepts apply to a very unique and individual you, right? And so the second one, in the concepts we teach, humans need a big story and small tasks, right? We need a story that gives our lives meaning, and we need the practical habits mundanely that tend and help us to express our potential. So those courses walk you through that entire process. And then information's not transformation, right? And so we need to continually practice this. And so the community, there's a structured community conversation that can happen, and it's designed to be up to 7 people with a host who just guides the framework. It's sort of like Uber for group therapy, right? So anybody who can keep time and follow a script and facilitate a conversation could host a conversation. And they are encouraged to charge $10 to $17 for participation. The conversation is designed very specifically. Any 7 people from any background who have been through this have the language to communicate with one another. So neurobiology designed into this to reinforce, as a group, the changes that people are making. So it's highly carefully designed. I designed this a long time ago because I've been working on it for so long. And last year I decided to do some research on peer-led movements that were sustainable, that weren't cults or network marketing scams, that were actually healthy peer-led movements, right? Or healthy as far as humans can go. We're all capable of. And then I identified 10 metrics that would determine how sustainable, so longer than 10 years, and not decentralized, not based on a founder or a guru or things like that. 10 metrics. And then I measured several organizations against those things. So everything from Weight Watchers, Buy Nothing, Park Run, but even bigger ones, AA, all kinds of different organizations. And then I also measured the WellBeing Project's planning of what was based on how it was structured. And it tied for first place with AA. And because there are recognizable DNA for peer-led movements, right, that don't veer off into wonky areas. So what was very gratifying was that this was built intuitively, and then when it was mapped, it aligned as it did. And finally, the economy, I've kind of touched on this. If you are hosting virtually and you have the capacity to schedule 3 conversations a week that you're going to host and follow this script, think about, there's a lot of AA structure that's built into this situation. So if you're going on vacation and you're in recovery, you look for a local meeting and you go and you know what to expect. It's similar in this way. Any conversation you drop into, you know what to expect and you know how to communicate. And you can find any conversation any week that fits your schedule. But it's accessible, $10 to $17, right? But for a host, 7 people paying $10 to $17 for an hour of hosting is a very sustainable model, right? And so it incentivizes people providing, growing, and scaling up support for others. And the idea is to make flourishing, support, and community accessible to anyone who has technology and can get on either a phone or a computer. The second manifestation of this is the Workplace WellBeing company. Now, I had developed a while ago, because I worked in occupational health and safety, teaching, Red Cross classes in companies and all sorts of organizations. I took the principles of human needs, 10 areas of human needs, and designed a survey where employees could, it's behaviorally anchored rating scale, using a scale. And really what it's doing is, it has nothing to do with what they're doing. It is, can I meet the need? Can I meet my human needs given the conditions of this workplace? And so it goes through all of these. And the idea is not that a company has to meet all these human needs, But what they cannot do is prevent or prohibit human needs from being met, given the conditions of their workplace, right? So it is, I had made this, but it was a spreadsheet with a dashboard, and that's just not very sexy. So I didn't have the capacity to really get out there. But when I turned it into software, it became a whole nother story, because now it is a web-based piece of software that a company can go on the site right now, purchase the tier that relates to the size of their workforce, so anywhere from a 10-person pilot up to enterprise level. Immediately they have a dashboard with a link, they send that out, and as soon as the first survey is completed, which takes about 10 to 12 minutes, they have a live dashboard of their data. There's no huge procurement, there's no waiting for some specialist to give you your results or whatever. You have it live in front of you. And at the same time, what you have is 5 buttons at the top, right? One is a report download of every statement in that survey, so you can see anonymously what your workforce has responded to every statement that was asked. But the other 4 are downloadable reports. One for leadership and a board, so they can understand the conditions of their work environment based on the priorities that they have as leaders, right? One for HR, based on the concerns of HR. All of the same data, but just presented to the audience appropriately based on their concerns and their area of decision making. Safety and compliance, and employee facing. Now, what I ran into after I built this was that ISO, International Standards Organization, that puts out standardization guidelines for every area of commerce, right? So that commerce can happen globally. In 2021, they published under occupational health and safety standards, the same guidelines that tell you have to give your employees hard hats and all kinds of PPE and how you handle spills and that kind of thing, published guidelines for psychosocial risk. And what they said is, we know that certain conditions harm humans. Stress, ambiguous workloads, ambiguous roles, unclear communication, poor processes, all kinds of stuff. And we know that stress has harmful effects on humans, and it's all the way down to cardiovascular, physical, like structural, skeletal, muscular, all kinds of impacts. So if we understand that these conditions cause harm, they're foreseeable. If they're foreseeable, they must be mitigated. If they're not mitigated, you are failing your duty of care and you're legally liable. Right? Amazing. And so, not quite in America yet, but around the world, these standards are being adopted. Right now in Victoria, the state of Victoria, Australia, it's the first state that has it fully adopted. So now the whole country is going compliant. But as of December of last year, every company that had employees had to be compliant with this, right? What's interesting is there's no tool that does that, except this one does. What it turns out when I mapped it to the ISO standards is the tools that I had created would suffice as audit readiness, right? Since December, the state of Victoria has brought $17 million in fines for noncompliance to companies. So this is a real need, right? And right now, the way it's being handled is, consultancies are saying, okay, here's the checklist that we're going to do, and the same way it's always done, right? But this is a tool that actually does the real thing and meets the spirit, the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. And again, what was kind of mind-blowing to me was when I ran into these things and then mapped what had already been prepared against them, they provided that kind of intuitively, I had built that, right? So that is what the workplace manifestation of it is. Don't worry, stick with me, I'm almost done. I'm sorry, I forgot to click ahead to this. So it's conditions-based measurement, so it's not engagement surveys, it's not sentiment surveys, it's ISO compliant. There is curriculum that goes with it. So the survey is a standalone, but if a company wanted to, there is Flourishing framework curriculum, which takes the same kind of human needs, but it teaches it in a context for the workplace. And it's delivered by graphic novel, because what I didn't realize until after I'd already designed it was there's all kinds of research about health education, graphic health education. It is the most effective form of learning for individuals. It codes 2 parts of the brain at once when we learn by picture and word. It's the most neurologically accessible for all learning types. A graphic novel can be read on a work site or a nurse's break, right? And it can also be read in a C-suite. And who doesn't want to read a graphic novel, right? Who wants to click through modules? Come on. Humans spend 50 to 75% of their waking hours on the job. There's no situation, no scenario where the conditions of your workplace don't affect your health and well-being. All right, so here's the plot twist. Why isn't this everywhere yet? If I've been working on it for so long, why are you just hearing about it now, right? So the problem is that I'm very competent in a lot of ways, and I can learn. And just like humans can adapt and survive, I have been adapting and surviving, teaching myself this and teaching myself that, and editing audio and learning and doing all kinds of things, and they are not my zone of genius, right? And I was teaching material that could have informed me if I was paying attention. But I was not going to thrive doing this. And so making a pivot to say, I'm not a marketer. I'm not an executive. I'm a teacher. I'm a framework maker. I can see and understand complicated things and make them accessible, and I'm going to stay right in here. That has been my pivot recently, very recently. So the pivot is operating in the sweet spot, staying here, doing what I'm good at. So from building platforms and remaking products and trying to scale things alone, to teaching, speaking, writing, and sharing this body of work, and partnering, leaving the door open for the right partners to build with integrity. Ideally, I don't want to be a psychosocial risk consultant. I mean, not ideally, I do not, right? There are plenty of people in that space who the software can be licensed to or the IP can be sold. And I would love a team to help me do that. So today marks that shift in my pivot. My personal website is the collection, the home base of my body of work. These are only 2 of many frameworks that I have built, many tools and products. But what I'm good at is teaching and hosting conversations where others are able to pull out. I am not interested in teaching people what to know. I'm interested in teaching people how to access what they know, right? It's not about what to think, it's about how to think, how to come up with your own intuitive understanding, right? I always say that truth that isn't found within isn't truth, it's just information, right? Revelation comes from within. There's a whole lot more at this website, and this is what I'm focused on now, because right now I have to focus on what is personally sustainable to me, and so scaling an organization in the short term right now is not helpful, is not what I can do. What I can do is present the tools and the opportunities that I do host and I can host. So I have made tools, and everything I've made has either been to meet a need of my own or someone I care about. So I have a being blueprint where 5 modalities, ancient modalities, we collect the data, and it creates a document. If you ever had an astrology natal chart done, or you had a human design report, or any of these things, and you thought, oh my God, wow, I learned so much about myself, right? And now it's in a drawer somewhere. This is a document that it helps you to actually create a document that you can use as a living reference. It's like like a 3D view of your wiring, right? Love and connection in a brave new world. Structurally and culturally, we have changed dramatically in the last couple of decades. And because we haven't really noticed those structural changes, relationships between adults who are looking for intimacy and connection and security with one another and healthy relationships, it's completely broken down, right? But it's not a personal thing. Men aren't jerks, women aren't bossy, demanding, whatever. Structural conditions have created an environment where there's so much misunderstanding. So this is a 12-week salon with a bunch of research to surface these ideas, talk through them, and actually have practical, meaningful engagement. So practicing having these difficult conversations about the invisible ledger of what a woman has contributed economically that doesn't show up, right? By the time she's 50 years old, if she has a college education, she's on average lost $400,000 in wages, invisibly, right? All kinds of connections. This loneliness epidemic with men, incredibly profound. So this is a way, working together, it's not for singles, it's for anyone who's an adult, a couple, whatever. Eat food, have sex, spend money. This is my favorite thing to say out loud. This is actually a spiritual practice group, right? Because we look for truth in, doctrines and dogmas and leaders and things like that. The way you relate to food, sex, and money is the best starting place for what you really believe and how your life becomes your curriculum. And so this is for people who've done inner work, who've been to therapy, who've read books, and now are ready to use their own life to uncover, to explore the shadow, to explore pleasure, and to learn how to integrate as a human. One-on-one conversations, right? And then the WellBeing Project Monday study sessions are what I am offering. So teaching the 3 courses just as a study group. All right, you guys have been so patient. Thank you so much for listening. So wait, did I go? Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. So what can the community do? I'm looking for partners to help license software. If you're interested in the WellBeing Project, your own personal path, right? Join a study session, check out the inventory, that kind of thing. Explore and share anything, any of my workshops on the site. If you know someone that would be a good connection, I would love to hear about it. And then there's a QR code. At the QR code is just a form that says, hey, if there's anything you want to share with me, if there's something you want to know about, and also the code for any 40% off for the next week or so, up to 3 of my bookings. Finally, if someone asks you what you heard today, who spoke at 1 Million Cups, this is what you can tell them. She's a recovering entrepreneur. She realized her creativity and gifting wasn't for building brands and organizations in the conventional sense. I build frameworks to help people flourish personally, communally, organizationally, and in specific seasons of life. And I'm open to the right partners for making well-being accessible.
Let's put our hands together.
Thank you, Rachel. That was fantastic. My name is Cam Knight. I want to make a comment before I ask my question. And I love that thing about eat food, have sex, because some of the great marketers say what everyone is looking for is to get paid, get laid, and to live forever. So that resonates. So if you're looking to figure out what to sell, that's what you want to sell. The other thing is, you were saying, why hasn't this come out yet? One of the reasons is obviously you're spending a lot of time building versus getting yourself out there. But I don't know if a lot of people actually want this stuff. People say they do, and I can't tell you the kinds of clients I work with where they say they've done everything or tried everything, and then I give them the simple things, and they look at me like I'm speaking another language. And it goes back to what you said, we've been conditioned to think that it's so complicated that it can't be that simple, when the reality is, we come from hunter-gatherer days, we're biological machines. Our cells are built for these simple things, and when we're not getting it, it gets complicated. And people go out and try everything. And I feel like they're more caught in the identity of being that person who's tried everything, because it seems cool to have tried everything, and so we can talk about it. So that, but the real question I have is, you said you had looked at a lot of different organizations like AA. I'm curious, did you look into Toastmasters? Because that's
I did,
similar.
yeah. They're in the, yep.
Where do they rank for you?
I have the research. I can show you the rankings and stuff. So yeah, if you get with me afterwards, or on that form, just put a note in there and I'll email you the research.
Okay, sounds good.
All of them are kind of mapped out.
So you're building your model around, you've already built it, but you're validating it because you're looking at some of the other.
Well, I wanted to see what could we discern from historical trends, and what would that inform about this? Is there something that is going to be obviously glaringly wrong? And what I just found is it aligned with the best version of the historical trends that we could see.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That was great.
Yeah.
Hello, Rachel. Thank you so much. I'm going to pull up my notes. I left an organization, large organization, a few years ago, and they were just getting into this, which is ironic. They had the dashboards and things like that. And so as I was thinking about, you mentioned licensing. And so I'm all about partnerships and connecting with people.
Yeah.
Who would you say, so I'm thinking of maybe consultants or people who already have the audience of these corporate people, corporations, who are the few people you could partner with and kind of distribute this to other consultants and stuff like that? Could be whether they're influencers, they own an audience, and they could get what you do to people who could license it. Have you thought about that? I
have. I built a pipeline of about 45 people around the world who are either government ministers, academics, or already in the psychosocial risk management space. What stopped me was, as I began to pursue that, I realized this is not aligned with who I am, right? So I talked about the being blueprint. My blueprint is not to get out and promote myself. My blueprint is to do what I'm good at and wait for the right invitations. And so I had to stop myself. I had identified all those people. I know who they are, I can tell you who they are, and yeah, I had to stop myself. So it was an act of discipline, but I have identified those people.
Hi, Rachel, my name is Peter. Can you go back to the slide that said the 10 needs?
I don't know. Brian, how do I go back? Do I just touch it? Is there? If you have a question about the 10 needs, maybe I can answer it.
Well,
Okay. Here.
back further. Well, okay, we can stop there. I see 5 and I see 2. I don't see 10. I don't see
5
total
times
of-
2.
Oh, okay.
5 needs, so nourish, rest, exercise, maintain, eliminate for the being and for the body.
Very good, thanks.
Hey, Rachel. My name is Jordan Thompson, and I love. Can you hear me?
I can.
I love the aspect where you were talking about natal chart readings and all of these testing funnels that we get put through all the time, right? Where you put your information in, you get the awareness. But as you said, right, briefly, right? The awareness is the doorway, right? So I love that you have pieces to help guide people through the journey from there.
Yeah.
That's really, really big, because for myself, being a practitioner, I realize that so many people get these tests and they get these outcomes, or this is who I am. Now what do we do with it? Now we just kind of wear that around like an identity, and sometimes we can use that as a crutch if we don't have a facilitator.
Yeah.
So,
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
Pleasure. That question from Eric was a good example of how, like, you know, there's pressure to do things, to follow this path and follow this plan and that kind of thing. And if you don't align yourself and know where your boundaries have to be for who you are, and so, yeah, that's just an example of how I've had to use my own tools to keep myself on track.
Okay, how do you copyright this? How do you make sure somebody doesn't just take this and...
So there's no framework that I have found that, so for example, there are all kinds of people operating in the psychosocial risk management space, right? And they have all kinds of ways to do that, but there's no actual tool, and the reason they don't have a tool is because they don't have a definition of what flourishing is. So all they can do is create pathogenic tools. How do we reduce absenteeism? How do we, you know, raise engagement? Things like that. But if you don't have a framework where you start with the flourishing conditions and then see where you are to bring it up to it instead of trying to get away from problems. And so to answer your question about how I protect the IP, it's a measure of, I mean, number one, I have mixed feelings about protecting it. That's why I might need a team, because I'd rather have people well, right? So if someone can copy it and do it effectively, you know, they asked Jesus in one time, they're like, hey, these people are like claiming your name, whatever. And he's like, if they're not against us, they're for us, right? Like if we're in the business of making people better, I'm on the fence about protecting concepts that are pretty basic and universal. I just happen to articulate them in a practical way.
I have a comment. When you mentioned what you had done with the incarcerated folks,
Mm-hmm.
it reminded me that my wife and I visited a death row inmate down in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time, not a long time, but it took me a while to realize, what are we doing with him, for him? And it realized that our being there and our interacting with him was loving him. Mm-hmm. And it took me to the spiritual place
Mm-hmm.
that you didn't mention until towards the end. And I am so glad you did that, because I think the whole concept of what you're doing, or the concepts, is really about loving ourselves and
Mm-hmm.
loving others.
Mm-hmm. Yesterday, I was listening to Diary of a CEO, that podcast with Stephen Bartlett, and he was interviewing Professor Jang, who is of predictive history and has this big following. He's made all these predictions. He predicted Donald Trump would be in another term. He predicted he would go to war with Iran. All these things that, you know, a couple years ago, we were like, no, that could never happen. So he was making 8 more predictions that were scary, right? But he spent an hour and a half explaining everything, and it was incredibly eye-opening, right? So about an hour and a half in, Stephen Bartlett says to him, okay, this is pretty, like, freaking scary. And some of the things that were not predictions. He was saying, this is what has happened. This is where we are. This is already happening. And so Stephen Bartlett says, okay, so what does this mean for the average person? What are we supposed to do about geopolitics? What is the message here for each individual? And I was not prepared for the answer he gave. And it was essentially what I just said before. When you focus on things that you have no control over, you feel helpless. When you identify what you do have control over, you experience your power. And he said we need leaders who will give hope. We need to direct people's attention towards their local community, building together, understanding what happens. When he was saying, he said, I'm very hopeful because humans have gotten very lazy with what we have, but humans have a history of snapping to attention when cataclysm happens, right? And he compared what we're living in to the collapse of the Bronze Age, right? And he said, it's all cyclical, right? Good things came after that. But he said the focus, and it was just so inspiring, is if you don't have control over it, don't spend your energy on it, right? If electricity goes down, if the banking system goes down, what kind of bonds do you have with your neighbor? That's the things that we focus on, right? You can't change geopolitics, but you can hydrate yourself, which is going to affect your cognitive function. And will have all kinds of effects just from that. So we think, and everybody wants us, the powers that be want us to think. And one more other thing he said was, he used Plato's cave. And he said, we're chained in this cave, and we've become so identified with the shadows on the wall as our identity and as our meaning. And when people suggest that there's something beyond that, we kill them, right? We don't want to hear it because we're so attached to the shadows that we don't want to know what's beyond the cave, right? But we have the capacity to move beyond the cave, but it's very practically. Thank you.
Oh, don't worry.
I'll get it.
No, wait. I swipe left. No, wait. Okay. It worked. Okay. Okay. Who's leaving here inspired? Let's go. And I like this whole. I like the whole phone thing, leaving the phone somewhere. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited to see what else. It's like simple and practical and life-changing. Mm. I would love another night of sleep per week. That sounds great. Big shout out to our event sponsors, Charlie and Troy Ball, who generously donate the space each week, Hatchworks Co-working, Mountain BizWorks, the Pisca Fund, NC Idea, Patrick with EOS Entrepreneurial Systems, Hatch Foundation, Bear, the Brookshire Garside Group, ERC Broadband, Brick Creative, Dynamite Coffee Roasting Company, Broadbeam Live Media, that's Brian back there, managing things at the helm, and Western Carolina University and SCORE. All right, next week we have Ride Better Together, which is a nonprofit that brings older people or people with handicaps or needs to appointments and brings them together. Is that a pretty... And they basically are totally self-funded. And with what I read, I'm super inspired by that too. I'm really excited to see it.
And part of his focus is on community.
There we go.
He's generating what we need.
Yeah, I'm very excited because old people are the cutest. I love it.
Thank you.
That's right. The Digital Nomads. We have Manifesting Self, hosted by Adam K. with the good hair. That's what we call him around here. Adam with the good hair. And that will be on Thursday. That's tomorrow. And it's kind of a quiet week. I feel like we had the busiest May, the busiest April, and hopefully we all get a chance to breathe a little bit more in June. Thank you so much for coming. Bill?
I got a message from Adam this morning. I think that's canceled, but I'm not positive. So I will get in touch with him and let you know.
That sounds great. Okay, good. Well, have a great day. Go inspire someone. Go reach out to someone and have a good conversation one-on-one. What is it Rachel says? Spend money, eat food.
Eat food, have sex, spend money.
There you go. And
Go
have a
for
great
it.
day.